welcome to the Fertility Conversations podcast. The goal of this podcast is to create more awareness about infertility and to provide support to people trying to conceive. Thank you for listening today, and we hope you will be encouraged. And now, here is your host, Ola.
Welcome to episode 16. Today I have with me Genevieve, the founder of Traveling Donors. She's also been an egg donor herself, and her donation has led to the birth of 9 children around the world. Traveling Donors is a full-service international egg donor program that specializes in the matching of intending parents and egg donors across the world. The intending parents are able to select a donor from their database while still being able to use the clinic of their choice. Traveling Donors helps to create a synergy between prospective parents, egg donors, and fertility clinics. They will also be able to guide and assist each intending parent's journey to parenthood, whether it is in selecting or arranging a suitable egg donor to travel abroad to a clinic of your choice, or whether you're in need of an egg donor and a surrogate. To connect with Genevieve, you can do so on social media, on Instagram at Traveling Donors, and also on their website, www.travelingdonors.com. Her details would also be in the show notes. So thank you and welcome, Genevieve. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So to start off, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I founded Traveling Donors in 2011, and this was as a result of a close family member who was living in the UK, faced her own infertility struggles. They wanted to have a baby, but obviously the traditional ways weren't working for them. So they started with IVF, and they were lucky enough to fall pregnant with their second round of IVF. And it was when I was 21 years old that I had overheard my mom and her cousin over talking IVF, and I learned the word egg donor for the first time. And I decided to do some research on what it meant because I'd never heard it before. So after doing some research, that was when I decided that this was something that I personally felt that I was comfortable with doing, and that I very much wanted to be able to help other women be able to have children of their own through myself being an egg donor. So I have helped 4 couples all across the globe, resulting in 9 live births, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I have donated in the USA, Malaysia, Brisbane, and India was where I did all my own personal donor cycles for the families that I helped.
Wow. And are you in touch with the 9 children?
Yeah, so my families, I have an open relationship with 3 of the 4 families, which means that they have my contact details and they can email me or WhatsApp me whenever they like. If they want to share information or say hello and just let me know how they're doing. That was something that we all felt that we were quite comfortable with, but obviously that just depends on each individual case.
Okay, so that's not something that's compulsory in every case.
No, it's not compulsory. So it really depends on each case. It depends on what the intended parents are comfortable with, what they would like to have for their unborn children, and also what the donor is comfortable with. And then once everyone is on the same page, then we're able to decide the best path forward.
Okay, so it's okay because in some cultures, I know for example in Nigeria, people might feel more comfortable with anonymous donor. And they might not want to be in touch with the. Yes. So is that something that's okay as well?
So it is possible to do anonymous donor cycles. But what I do, I'm an advocate for known donor cycles, just because I do believe that given in the modern age that we're in, we're all now one genetic test away from knowing exactly, where the rest of our family members are. So the way I present it to couples who are feeling nervous or apprehensive about the idea of a known donor, I suggest you break it down. I say to them, right, well, you may not want to have contact after the donation, but you may decide in 20 years' time that you do want to introduce this idea of the fact that you use an egg donor to have your family to your children. Mm-hmm. And if they ever had to have questions, with an anonymous donor cycle, you'd never be able to really provide them with an opportunity to even have like a Zoom phone call with somebody So I believe that everyone is entitled to know their genetic roots.
Mm-hmm.
And what I encourage is that each person creates like a separate email address, which is completely private, not linked to their everyday lives.
Right.
And the donor can create one as well. So should either party, say in 5 years or 10 years time, decide that they would like to get in touch, there is a method of communication that is available that is also not invasive. So it's not like an email address that you need to check every day.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do decide to check it once every 6 months and you find that there is an email, then great. If there's not, it doesn't matter. But it also gives you as the intended parent the decision to make a choice once you've had your baby. Because remember, it's an extremely emotional journey for everyone involved. And sometimes intending moms and dads who haven't yet had a child, it's more of a difficult idea for them to, really think about how they might feel once they're, giving birth to their baby, they've got the baby in their arms. It's sometimes difficult to know how you're going to feel in 5 years' time about a question that you're being asked now.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why I suggest a separate email account, because that way, if you do, get more comfortable with the idea and you've got your babies and you decide your family is complete, but you would like to say thank you to your egg donor and send her an update, there is a way to still do that. And obviously, even if you did decide to 100% anonymous, you can obviously still pass those letters via the agency.
Right.
But, that's also a lot less personal, and you do have to then get more people involved to reach out to your donor.
Sounds wonderful, actually. At least that option is there. I like the idea that you don't have to decide now, but at least you have that option.
Yes.
If you ever decide. Okay. And what services does your agency provide? So I know, of course, you provide it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so mainly we are an international egg donation agency. So we'll be able to assist in guiding you to finding an egg donor that you're comfortable with. And then if you are looking for a fertility clinic to do the treatment with, that is also something we can also guide you with.
Oh, okay.
And depending on what you're comfortable with and your budgets and where you would like to have the treatment completed, will guide us as to what suggestions we might recommend. We do have, a number of patients who do travel from North Africa to North Cyprus for treatment.
Okay.
So we've had some African couples come to Cyprus to do their IVF treatment. I have a couple at the moment. They're actually doing surrogacy through Cyprus as well. They're also from Africa. So there are options available.
Okay.
I just know that perhaps they're not, readily available, or the information is not, easily available at the moment.
Exactly. And that's good to know, because sometimes, people from Nigeria or other parts of the world travel to Europe for IVF treatments, because it's supposed to be pretty much the services and the facilities they have there are pretty advanced.
Affordable.
Yeah, and affordable as well.
Yes.
But of course, in many cases, when they do need donor eggs, many of these countries do not have donors that are Black. So that becomes an issue. So if they were to use your agency, would you then be able to bring donors to them if they were going to Cyprus or Greece or wherever?
Yes. So if they decide that they would like to not have the treatment in their own home country for whatever reasons, and they say they select Cyprus and they do go through our database and we're able to match, they select a donor they feel comfortable with, then we would arrange for all the treatment to take place in Cyprus.
Okay.
So the intended mother and father would obviously work directly with the IVF clinic with their own treatment plan, because obviously endometrial preparation is slightly different from the donor's preparation that she'll be doing.
Right.
And the clinic doctors will then obviously provide all the information and the steps that they need to follow prior to arriving at the clinic.
I see. And how much information do you get about the donor? So if you're getting an egg donor, do you see pictures? Like, what details do you have of the
so our egg donor profiles are quite in depth.
Okay.
We have, it's about a 10 to 12 page application that you get to read through, and that has information about the donor's education, her family history, her family medical history, and that includes her immediate family, so her mom, her dad, her brothers or siblings, grandparents on either side of her parents, and that medical information will be in her application. And then also things like her hobbies, types of food she might like. We do ask them to write a bit about their personalities, what they're studying, where they sort of would see themselves in 5 years' time. Even though it's a very big question, it's nice to know where someone's thoughts are at and what sort of goals they'd like to achieve in the coming years. So that is quite a lot of information that we provide. It's not the same if you had to go direct to some of the other, clinics directly. Often clinic recruited donors don't have as much information as what we provide, because we're an independent. We sorted out our own system of operation and how we want to deliver information to our intended parents. We also follow more of in the American standard in terms of what the donor application or profile looks like, which in Cyprus, you don't get to see any photos. You just get to, it's just like 2 or 3 pages of information. And then you have to make a decision based on that. With us, we will be able to provide adult photos, childhood photos. We also do, if the donor has been matched, we do request that she does about a 40-second donor introductory video, just saying a little bit of who she is. Well, I mean, you're wanting to know who this woman is that is so generously offered to help you. And just seeing photos is sometimes not enough to really get a sense of who the person is. So I do try and like to provide as much as information as I can, while still respecting the egg donor's need for privacy and her family's need for privacy. So one question we do sometimes get asked is, can we share family photos of the egg donor's parents and aunts and brothers and sisters? And in theory, we can, if she provides those to us. But we do need to also respect the rest of her family's privacy. That their personal information photos is not, I'm not in charge of making that available to intended parents. If the egg donor personally actually has to ask her family's permission to share photos with a complete stranger. I mean, I know that if you're not part of my Instagram or Facebook, I wouldn't want strangers sharing my photos with somebody that I didn't know. So that is the only one thing, is that, unless the donor provides the photos to us, where we can't force her to share information that she's not comfortable with, because obviously we have to respect her family's privacy.
Of course, sounds good. And in terms of do you get a lot of the medical history as well, if there's any genetic issues? Or...
Yes. So genetic screening is standard in our agency. So we would, if we had a match and the egg donor had never been genetically screened, both the intended father and the egg donor would complete a simple saliva test that they would spit in a tube, and then it would get shipped back to the lab in San Francisco with Invitae, and then it'll take about 3 weeks, and we will then get the results. Once we have the results, we'd be able to make sure that neither the egg donor nor the intended father are carriers for the same genetic conditions. So what happens is, if both people are a carrier for the same condition, it means that there's a 25% chance that the embryo, one of the embryos that we put back, could result in that child being born with that genetic condition. And that is obviously something that we want to avoid at all costs. So it's only if we had to, once we receive the genetic results and we see that they are perfectly fine, that no 2 people are carrying the same genetic conditions, we're then able to formally move forward with the match, knowing that there's no issues on the genetic side. And then the egg donor would, of course, complete her standard fertility screening, checkups, and infectious screening to make sure that she's in perfect health to complete the donor cycle.
Okay. And do you have a lot of Black donors?
We do have a large number of Black donors. I mean, I am originally from South Africa, so we do have a very wide donor database. I'm currently based in Puerto Rico, so as I move
Nice.
around the world, we do have a wide number of ethnicities that apply to our agency. If you find someone that you like but not quite right, we do ask the intended mums to share some photos of themselves to help us with the donor search, because sometimes we get a number of applications that come in each month, and not everyone is loaded onto the database immediately because it takes time to make sure the profiles are accurate and correct before they go live. So we might be able to tell you or make other profiles available to you that are not necessarily online.
Okay. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with, there are some conditions that are common amongst Black people. I'm not sure of other countries, but for example, in Nigeria, people are really concerned about sickle cell. Yeah. So is that something? Go ahead.
So that's why the genetic screening is so important, because with Invitae, their extended carrier screening, it screens for 301 conditions, and most of those conditions would be the ones that would be of concern in Nigeria. So beta thalassemia, alpha thalassemia, all the anemias are included. Cystic fibrosis, a couple of X-linked conditions. So we know that is why it's important, because different ethnicities do have different conditions we have to be more concerned about. Yeah. So like for Caucasians, it would be cystic fibrosis. Because at the moment it was like 1 in 4 people are potential carriers, or 1 in 8. I might be slightly off, but that was the one that I was told is one that they look out the most for, with Caucasian patients. So and then the same goes with Asian. Each different ethnicity has specific genetic conditions that are more prevalent to them.
Exactly. Okay. And in terms of, I know you noted that you do have quite a few Black donors. What is the average wait time for someone seeking to use a donor?
So there's no waiting lists for intended parents. So if you came to me tomorrow, you sent me an email and you said, "Hi, I'm Petra and I'm looking for an egg donor that could travel to Greece. I'm from Lagos. Here are my photos." I would then be able to send, we normally start with about 8 profiles first that we email to you, so that you can, you take a look, get used to the idea of it, instead of bombarding with like 50, which is, really overwhelming. And then based on that, I'd get feedback from you and you let me know and you'd guide me in the direction until we found a donor that you were happy with. So there's no exact waiting list to get a donor. It really depends on the intended parents themselves and what specific characteristics they're looking for in their egg donor. And if they're, if they don't want to wait too long, or if they're sort of quite happy with the donors that we have available, we could have a donor to the clinic of treatment within as short as 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty impressive. And with, if you do have an egg donor and you have to go to certain countries, for example, the UK, because the UK, I think they have some kind of rule where the child has to have access to the donor when they're 18 or something like that. If you go to a country like that, or countries that do not allow anonymous donors, and so for example, someone coming from Nigeria and maybe using a clinic in the UK, and wanting to stay anonymous, wanting a donor that's anonymous, but then UK having that policy of...
Unfortunately, we would have to follow the laws of the country that we're going to, in terms of it being anonymous or known. So in Australia, by law as well, any children born via donor egg or sperm, if the donor's information is registered on a donor registry. However, if the intended parents don't share that with their child, that they were born of egg or sperm donation, the child would never know that they have access to that information. So that's really a personal decision that the intended parents have to decide whether or not they're going to disclose this to their children.
Okay, just to be mindful as well, that so parents also need to also check the laws of whatever country they decide to use for the clinic, to keep that in mind.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then people can sometimes be concerned about the number of potential siblings. So how many times a donor has donated? Is there a cap for your
Yes,
agency?
so
Okay.
there is sort of an international sort of agreed upon sort of, it's not written by law,
Right.
necessarily internationally, it does vary. But throughout the world, most clinics sort of cap it at 6 families.
Okay.
So you can donate to 6 families, excluding your own. So your own family would count as a 7th family.
Okay, that's good.
So like in the UK, they're allowed to donate to 10 families maximum. So basically it means your family plus 9. So donors allowed to donate to 9 different families. If she's an egg donor, that means she could end up with around an average of 18 live births if each family, or 12 live births if each family decided to have 2 children.
Wow.
So for example, myself, I donated to 4 families, and I ended up with 9 live births out of those 4. So it goes to show that, you know, some families do end up having 3 or 4 children, some have 2, some have 1. So it really depends, but in terms of egg donation, it is capped. It's a bit different from sperm donors. Sperm donors do seem to end up having a lot more children than egg donors.
Yeah, the process is different, isn't it?
Yes, but I had thought that they would have limited that to 6 families as well.
Yeah.
There seems to be a bit of a difference between the number of families an egg donor can help and the number of live births a sperm donor can have. And I'm not quite sure why the two aren't exactly the same. But I have noticed that sperm donors have up to 50, 60 children, some of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a bit too much as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I wonder if it was because of the whole process for egg donation. I mean, it's a little bit more intense. But even then, 60 is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard horror stories of doctors back in the day who had been using their own sperm to father
even
like
now.
100 kids. I know, and stories are still coming out. So it is a bit, you do get a little bit concerned. But for egg donation, it is capped at 6 families. And also it's a very taxing process on the woman's body. So most egg donors, like myself, I've helped 4 families. And to be honest, I don't know if I could do it again. You do reach a point where you're content with what you've done, with who you've helped. You're happy to see the joy on these families' faces.
Yeah.
So I don't feel that I need to complete the other 2 outstanding families that I have. If I had to come across a really remarkable couple and I connected with them on a personal level, I may consider it. But I'm also turning 30 in 2 weeks' time. So my time to be an egg donor again is running out personally. But it is something you do, you know, you get happy that you've done it, and it's not something you do in your life. It's not as easy as being a sperm donor. That's for sure.
So what's the age limit then for egg donors?
So technically, obviously you have to be 18, but a lot of clinics do prefer donors who are close to the age of 21 years old, just for emotional maturity. You know, it's a big decision you're making. We want to make sure that you're making this decision when you've done enough research. You're not just doing it, you know, because you might be able to have a compensation or think it's fun or easy. We want to make sure that you really are educated about your decision. And that you understand the long-term
impact
side effects. Yeah, the long-term impact of being an egg donor is that there are going to be children in the world that are genetically related to you.
Yeah, but are there any actual? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the maximum ages would be about 32 years old to be an egg donor. That's the cutoff, unless you've got proven fertility. So proven fertility is you've already got a child of your own that you had no more than 2 years ago, because obviously we know that a woman's fertility decreases with age as she gets older. And then, so the average age of an egg donor is around about 25 years old, but you can be an egg donor from as young as 18, although our agency doesn't personally accept donors at 18. We have had donors 19 and 20, but that was on a case-by-case situation where we had deemed the donor was, you know, mature enough and she had completed her psychological evaluations and everyone was happy and had approved her to move forward. And then, so the maximum age would be 32. In Australia, they do accept up to the age of 35, and in countries like Georgia and Ukraine and a few other countries in Europe, will accept donors up to 35 years old, but I do know that the average is most clinics prefer the donors to be under 30 years old.
Okay. And in your case, I know you noted that you for now, you think you've, like you've donated as much as you want to. Do you get a chance to actually also have egg freezing for yourself?
Yes, so I have frozen my eggs myself. So I have eggs frozen in Cape Town. I did that last year. I got nine out of my 10 that I collected were mature, so I've got 9 frozen. I know, and that's also got to show it's about quality over quantity. You'd rather have really good eggs than 20 average eggs. So I am planning on doing one more round of egg freezing myself. The rule of thumb is that you need 10 eggs to have 1 live birth.
Wow.
And how that I know it sounds scary, so let me break it down. So out of all the research they've done in the 40 years, the scientists and biologists and all these super smart people have been able to work out that on average, in order to have a live birth, you need to have a minimum of 10 mature eggs. So then once those eggs are fertilized, if all 10 fertilize, and on average, fertilization rates are around 80 to 90% in most clinics with young eggs, you should be having a fertilization rate around 80%. And that also, but then we also have to make sure that we have good sperm. So if your husband's sperm is good, he doesn't have any issues like genetic issues, he's under the age of 45. He's been taking good care, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't have high cholesterol, has been taking his vitamins, then the chances of you having a high fertilization rate is very good. So now, say we've ended up with, I'm going to just say, give us the perfect results. We've ended up with 10 out of 10. We're all very excited.
Happy,
fingers crossed. We started out strong. So what happens is, the rule is, of the eggs that are fertilized, usually only 50% of those will make it to blastocyte stage on day 5 or day 6 of the embryo's life. And then if we are lucky and we do end up with 5 embryos on day 5 and they're frozen, and we could take it one more step where the embryos could be PGS tested. And this is when 1 or 2 cells are removed from each one of the embryos to be sent away for genetic testing. And when the results come back, they will tell us whether or not these embryos are chromosomally normal, meaning they've got all 23 pairs of chromosomes and either XX or XY. So when those results come back, usually of the number that you end up on day 5, only half of those are genetically normal. So that is how the stats quickly drop down. Obviously, you need to bear in mind that's just the average. When they put all the information together across the world and they worked out the averages, this is what they were able to tell us. So, if you have 10 eggs and you get 5 blastocytes, you've done perfectly. You couldn't have, if you got any more than that, you've really got some fertility guardian angel.
Wow.
Yes. So that is why so of the 5, we should have at least 2 or 3 chromosomally normal embryos, and then your doctor would probably only recommend to put back 1 at a time to avoid the chance of a twin pregnancy, which is obviously then high risk, and we want to make sure that both the mom and baby have an easy pregnancy experience.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, just keep in mind what you just noted, how from 10, you could easily go to 1 live birth. And in some cases, some people could have, like you said, you do PGS testing, but they could also have some other genetic conditions they're testing for. So could your donors potentially, first of all, let me actually ask, do you have a minimum guaranteed number of eggs that the donor would, sometimes I see that saying that, you might get.
Okay. So when you see an egg guarantee, that's usually from the medical clinic side, not usually from the agency side.
Right.
We personally don't believe in giving a guarantee, as I believe we're working with a human body, and I don't think it's I don't think it's fair to put that kind of pressure on the egg donor to perform. And often when you see those kind of guarantees, the thing that makes me the most concerned is how much medication are they putting that egg donor on, and the risk they're putting her life through without sharing that information with her. And that does happen a lot throughout the world, is that there are clinics who don't tell the donors enough about what it actually means to go through IVF. They're not, I mean, like India and is a big, there are a lot of uneducated women who will see being an egg donor as an easy way to get some income.
Money,
Yeah, and and I want to stress, being an egg donor is not an easy paycheck. Those are not the kinds of women that we want to be egg donors. When you become an egg donor, you know, you should definitely have altruism at the forefront of your mind. You're doing this because you want to feel good about helping another family achieve their dream.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the compensation or the gift that you get along with it should be the bonus. That should not be the main motivating factor. Obviously, I know I was 21 and 22. I was a student when I was an egg donor for the first time. And the compensation was a great gift. You know, it paid for my studies, it paid my rent. So I fully understand that, you know, it's fine to have like a motivation that's 50% for the parents and 50% for yourself. Because, you know, everyone's benefiting from the experience and everyone's happy at the end. And that's really important that, you know, for us as an agency, if a first-time donor donates with us and at the end of the experience, she writes us a testimonial or, you know, writes me an email and says, you know what, Jenny, you had such a great time. I really can't wait till I get to help another family. Wow. And that's how you know as an agency that you've really done a good job in taking care of all your donors' needs and made sure that she's fully supported throughout her experience.
Yeah, and that's very important because even many intending parents are concerned. They want to make sure the donor's life is not put at risk and people could have overstimulation. They want to make sure all of that was well discussed. Okay, so if a family then needs, so for example, if the donor has a cycle and maybe has 6 eggs, and the family perhaps want to have a sibling, will the kind of donor donate twice to the same family if they wanted to just maybe freeze more or have other options for the future?
Yes, absolutely they can. And I just want to follow on to what I was saying. So the average number of eggs we have seen young women produce is around 15 to 18 eggs on egg collection. Yes, you know, because that's why the younger the donor, the better the fertility, the better the quality of eggs. So yes, hang on, I've lost my train of thought. So yeah, the average number of eggs is around 15 to 18.
Yeah.
And then often from that, you should get enough embryos to try for a sibling. But if you do run out of embryos and you would like a sibling, we are able to arrange a sibling cycle. And obviously, your donor would have to undergo the same procedure again to produce more eggs for you. Okay.
And what is the cost of, I'm not sure, is that something you can discuss, cost?
I can give a rough estimation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously, if working with a traveling donor is a little bit more expensive because you need to factor in the flights and accommodation once the donor arrives at the location of treatment. We take care of all those arrangements for you, so it's not an added stress that the intended parents have to worry about. Okay. But the average cost for an egg donor, you're looking. So I'm going to work an example, like South African egg donor traveling to Cyprus for a patient from Nigeria would probably cost around $11,000.
Okay.
Okay. That, you know, yeah. So it's not a cheap. It's an expensive procedure to go through.
Yeah, but it's good, but it's also, I can see why it makes sense. Like, because obviously, yes, it might be $11,000, but that covers everything the donor needs. And then you just have to pay for your own treatment. But then, of course, you do get to see what the donor looks like, at least to a better extent, to have an idea what the person is like. Because like you noted earlier, many clinics wouldn't give you that information. And people are already concerned about the fact that they have to use a donor. And that if you do actually want to use one, it would be nice to have more information about the person. See, maybe you have some similarities, right? Maybe you like the same kind of movies or whatever it is. just something to give you an idea of who this person is.
So I forgot to mention is that, so on top of providing, a very detailed application, the donor video, the 20, if, for example, maybe she shares 20 photos with us, if you once you've confirmed it's a donor, what we will also do for you is we will arrange a group Zoom or Skype call. Okay. So myself or one of my colleagues will be on the call with you and the donor and the intended parents to do a friendly introduction, to say hello, like everyone, put a face to a name.
Oh, wow, that's lovely.
Yes, and the nice thing is that, and we can do it anonymously, so we let our egg donors log into a separate Skype account so that the intended parents don't get her details and she doesn't get theirs. And so we do respect everyone's privacy, and then they get to and most of the time, if I need to do more talking, it depends on how chatty the parents are and how shy everyone is. So sometimes I don't need to do much more than say like, hi, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, then people start chatting by themselves. But if everyone's a little bit shy, then there is somebody on the call to act as a bit of a buffer and an icebreaker to help get the conversation going. And then usually after we've done the Skype call, we allow everyone sort of what we call like a cooling off period of like 72 hours, which gives both the egg donor and intended parents a chance to go away, think about, what they've just experienced, the woman they've just met, chat amongst themselves, just to make 100% sure that they really are happy with the decision that they've made. Right. It's obviously the Skype call is not compulsory, and not all our parents opt or ask me to arrange it. It really depends on each individual intended parent. Some of them want it, some of them are just perfectly happy with the video and they say it's more than enough. So we are extremely flexible and try and be as accommodating as we humanly can be with requests, as long as they're obviously realistic. Right. If someone comes with some, obscure request from the egg donor, it's probably not going to happen. Right. A lot of, people need to remember egg donors are people. It's not a product you're going to purchase at the beauty store. And there are no refunds, like you can't return it. She has her own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. She's a human being, and I think sometimes people do forget that as much as you've gone through your own personal journey and struggle with infertility, here is a young woman of 22, 23 who's graciously offered to go through that same journey with you, put her body through the exact same process you went through for 5 years to donate her eggs to you. And I think sometimes that is what gets lost in translation between intended parents and the egg donors. And I've been doing this for 9 years, so I can honestly tell you that I have seen this does happen, that intended parents can sometimes forget that the egg donor is a person, not just someone that you're reading off a piece of paper. And we do try and advocate, we try and advocate very strongly for both the egg donor and the intended parent. We want to make sure that everyone is fully supported. And I've reached a point now where I've decided that if I feel intended parents are not quite yet ready to make the step to doing egg donation, even if they personally think they are, I do recommend therapy. And therapy is extremely positive. Book a session with a fertility coach, a business coach, a life coach, somebody who's outside of your immediate circle, who can really give you an unbiased opinion and be a sounding board for you. I do know that a lot of women, when they're going through this process, they don't find their husbands to be very helpful. Well,
because in their mind, they think, well, you're the one providing your sperm. I'm the one that has to use a donor, right? So you need someone outside that.
Yes. I think it is important. I think people often look at therapy therapy as a negative thing. I think it's an extremely positive tool, especially for IVF. It's such an overwhelming process that it's good to have a safe space outside of you and your partner's journey. Even if just you yourself personally go once a month to vent for 60 minutes.
To yell at somebody and be like, hey, I hate having to do this.
Exactly. You know, exactly. That's important. And I think we need to be more kind to ourselves, those of us who are going through this journey of IVF, and realize that it's nothing to be ashamed about. You know, whether I suffer other health illnesses later in my life or my friend goes through IVF, it doesn't mean one of us are being punished, the other one's not. I know people do feel like they're being punished when they're struggling with infertility and IVF. I know that's not the case. It's just, you know, each of us have to walk our own path, and we have our own unique challenges.
Well said.
I think, I'm just trying to watch the questions. So
no.
No.
It's been great, really, because these are important things. Using a fertility coach or counselor is very important, even if you're using your own eggs. But if you're using egg donor, definitely much more important, because you need to come to terms with that reality and understand what the end goal is and accept it. Because you know, like you said, you can't return it. You need to be ready before you get into that process.
You know, and over my 9 years of doing this, as the agency owner, and you know, I'm one of the consultants, so I do manage cases, and then I have obviously some staff who do as well. We will try and be there as much as we humanly can be, but there have been times where my patients have had me on the phone for 2 hours, venting and crying and talking their stories, and I love them, but I'm not trained. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a trained infertility coach. You know, I could obviously, you know, be empathetic and supportive, but you really should get somebody who has the tools and the know-how to really help you break through those boundaries while you're on this journey. But it's a difficult thing to suggest therapy to somebody. A lot of people get like, oh no, that's not for me.
I know, I don't need that, I'm fine.
There's nothing wrong with my brain. But it's not about your brain. I'm worried about your heart. How's your heart doing? You know, how are you feeling emotionally about this? Like, listen, I'm not worried about your obviously infertility can affect one's mental health.
Definitely.
But when when you're doing egg donation, I mean, the one woman I was helping last year, she didn't tell anybody in her family, not her family, not her friends, nobody, just her and her husband. And I suggested, don't you have a life coach, or look into these fertility coaches that I know? And I sent the links, and she went and had 2 sessions. She phoned me back and she said, actually, those 2 sessions have been quite transformative, and she's feeling a lot more comfortable with this process, because one needs to understand, when you've done 5 rounds of IVF and then your doctor says to you, unfortunately, there's nothing more we can do, we get told you have to use an egg donor.
Exactly.
It's not like the doctor tells you you have to use an egg donor to get pregnant. It's a very difficult thing to accept. And then often after the clinics, there's no more support. You get told you're infertile, you get told you need an egg donor, and then 10 minutes later, you're walking out of your IVF specialist door and you feel like you are an incompetent human. Like, you feel like you failed as a woman, and they send you home with no support. And I've listened to so many stories, and I'm just kind of like, but surely, like, somebody's got to realize that system's not working. The way that doctors deliver information,
I know,
especially in this industry, I think needs to be changed.
And it seems like they should even know better, right? Because they've seen so many people, they've seen how it impacts families and people, but yet they're just like, it's almost like robotic, like it's a science textbook, well, this is what it is, deal with it. And it's like, no.
And you know, like in Australia, it's compulsory for both the intended family and the egg donor to do 2 sessions of counseling.
Oh, that's amazing.
So in Australia, when an IVF specialist tells you that unfortunately they can no longer continue using your own eggs in this journey, in order to move to be approved by the clinic to move forward with egg donation, you have to complete 2 counseling sessions with the fertility counselor.
Wow, I love that idea. That should be compulsory elsewhere. I think it's amazing. Let's do that.
I think before anyone can just move on to egg donation, I do think that they should, you know, at least 1 or 2 sessions should be compulsory. for both the husband and the wife, because
Exactly.
we all know how much tension this
It
journey
can
can put
cause,
on a
yeah.
marriage. Exactly. And many marriages have fallen apart because of IVF.
Yeah.
And I think, I personally believe, had those marriages had more support,
Yeah, and counseling.
where
Yeah.
each partner, both the husband and the wife, felt they had a safe space to go to, it may not have ended the way that it did. And I'm not just saying therapy is just for women. I think the men, they too need to learn how to voice the way they feel about this procedure. And too often we tend to neglect the fact that they also have feelings, but men just process and internalize things very differently than us.
Yeah, nobody pays too much attention to them. It's just the women. So just to actually ask, when you talk about that, because in most of the time we've spoken about the egg donors traveling. So for example, if the couple, let's continue to use Cyprus. So the couple is going for treatment in Cyprus. If the egg donor from your agency lives in South Africa and decides to have the procedure in a clinic in South Africa, is that possible? And could they transfer the eggs to Cyprus? Or do they always need to travel?
Yeah, no, they don't. No, they don't always need to travel. So we can have the treatment take place where the donor is living, and then have the eggs shipped to Nigeria.
Right.
So it is an option. It is also an option to have an egg donor potentially travel to Nigeria. But I will say now that based on my experience, when I personally took an egg donor to Nigeria, I'm not sure every young woman would necessarily be keen on coming to Lagos.
Right.
I can't force donors to go to countries they don't feel comfortable with, but I can, is it a possibility? Yes, it's a possibility if we found a donor who is happy to do that. I mean, that's the thing, when I speak to patients, I say them, a lot of things are possible, but we need to understand we're dealing with a lot of different people, and we've got to make sure that everyone's comfortable through this process. So I do like to go, step by step and take things slowly versus rushing through everything. So we can. So yes, you don't necessarily have to travel out of Nigeria to complete your treatment. It is possible to have the eggs shipped to you. Last time I inquired about shipping eggs into Nigeria, I heard that there were a couple of issues with immigration, and that was about 18 months ago. So it is possible, but I do know that you would just need to confirm with your clinic about receiving genetic material, because I heard that Nigeria has their own strict laws about the importing of genetic material into the country.
Okay. And you have said a lot, told us a lot about egg donation and, of course, the egg donors and your agency as well. But is there any other information about egg donation or your agency that you'd like to add?
So some more information that I would probably talk about, seeing as we are talking about Nigeria, is if you do find that you do need an egg donor, and your clinic is suggesting that, and take your time, go home, think about it. Remember, the uterus doesn't age the same way eggs do. Women are able to have babies, up until 60 years old, give birth. We've seen, a mom caring for her daughter or a grandmother, these things do happen. So if you do happen to find yourself needing an egg donor, I would suggest, before you delve into Google and start researching all this, take a couple of days for yourself and promise yourself that you won't use Dr. Google to Google everything. Really give yourself some quiet time, some downtime, because before you embark on this next whirlwind, you need to almost be at peace with yourself before you embark on this journey. And it's important to feel comfortable with making this step. And the worst thing to do is to start a process and then realize you're not yet ready for it. But that's also okay if you start doing the research and finding agencies and start looking at profiles and then decide you need more time for yourself. That's fine. You really want to make sure that when you decide that you're doing this, that this is something that you're 100% in agreement with, you're comfortable with it, you've thought about how you would like your family to be in 5 years' time. You've envisioned the end result, and that is really the goal, is to have a healthy, happy baby. Yes. And we want to help you to have a healthy, happy baby. And another tip that I give a lot of parents is, when you're thinking about the kind of woman that you'd like to help you to be an egg donor, physically write it down. Get a journal, write a pros and cons list. It might sound stupid. Like, do a process of eliminate. I want her to be 5'7", and I kind of would like her to look like my grandma, or, it would be great if she studied biology at university.
Yeah.
Physically manifest the things that you would like to see in the donor profile, and have a very clear vision of the person that you're hoping to find. But then at the same time, also make sure that you remain flexible, because the perfect egg donor doesn't exist. Even I'm not perfect, and I've had 9 live births.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure I maybe ticked 7 or 8 of the 10 boxes my intended parents were looking for when they found an egg donor. And the same will probably happen to you. Is when you are reviewing donor profiles, you will if I send you 20 and you ended up shortlisting them down to the top 5, each one of those girls or those young women, you will like something from the 1 candidate A, and you'll like something from candidate 4, and something from candidate 5. So, and once you've really worked through what's important to you, when you view these donor profiles, it'll be easier for you. It'll be easier to eliminate the profiles that don't stand out at you. That when you read them, when you find the right donor, a lot of people tell me like they instantly clicked with the profile. They loved what she wrote in her, her personal history section of what she'd like to do when she's graduated, or her reasons for being an egg donor. Like, some of my intended parents have said that they love that she read the same books as they did. You'll find something that you connect with in the donor profile, and trust your gut. If you have that feeling, like for some reason you can't put your finger on it, but this profile, she might not look exactly like you, because obviously we're all different, but she'll have certain elements that are similar to you. And if it feels natural, then go follow your gut, follow that instinct, and then ask the agency more information about that specific candidate, and until you're happy, and if they are able to provide you as many photos as possible, because then once you're able to view all that information and sit with it for a couple of days and review it with your husband, the 2 of you can then make an informed choice, because the next step after that is you are really now are going to commit to this journey. Yeah. Because you could review donor profiles for years without making that decision to take the next step. So how long does it take? It really depends on each individual couple. I've had some parents or couples who've been in communication with me for 2 years before they even select an egg donor.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that has to do with each person's own readiness for this journey, that they needed those 2 years to get their head around that this is the journey that they have to embark on to become parents. And then I find once they are fully committed, everything has to happen pretty quickly. People are pretty quick. But that would be sort of my main advice. Is it is going to be overwhelming. It is going to be confusing. It's going to be like, you're going to want to run away into the ocean and never come out. But be kind to yourself. Slow things down. There is no rush. There are thousands of egg donors out there wanting to help you. We all have our own reasons for becoming egg donors, but we all do have good reasons for being egg donors. We're good people. I haven't yet met a bad egg donor, if you know what I mean. So I would just end off with one of my favorite quotes that I have at the moment. Is by Audrey Hepburn, and she says, as you grow older, you'll realize you have one hand to help yourself and one hand to help others. And I read that the other day, and that really resonated with me, especially what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I think, we could also that can carry on into our everyday lives. If everyone just practices a little bit more kindness, especially given the current global pandemic, I think it would help. It would go a long way and kindness costs nothing.
Yeah, it's
It
free.
costs nothing to open the door for an old woman. It costs nothing to help someone with their groceries.
Yeah.
And as a young woman who might be thinking of becoming an egg donor, it also costs you nothing to be an egg donor, to share that kindness and help another family.
Yeah.
And that's something, another way to look at it is that as young women, we have so many ways we can help people. And for me, I found my calling through being an egg donor myself.
Wow. Well said. I love that. Thank you so much. And it's amazing what you do. It must be so fulfilling for you to do this on a daily basis, and to think it all started with that one conversation, being at the right place at the right time, and here
I
you are.
know that it is. It was 9 years ago now. I can't believe that that's how my journey started.
Yeah.
But I do love what I do. I am passionate about it. Obviously, the coronavirus has been terrible to so many businesses.
Of course.
But hopefully that's finally on the mend.
Coming to an
slowly.
end. Yeah. Slowly. Thank you so much, Genevieve, for coming on the show today. It's been pretty amazing having you on here, and I know lots of people will definitely be able to unwilling and reach out to you to use your services, because this conversation has come up very often. Many people, not necessarily in Nigeria, Nigerians traveling to other countries to have treatment, but just not having a lot of access to Black donors or people that look like them. So it's amazing. And of course, you know, they've also had times where they've gone to clinics and they say that they have a donor, but they can't see any picture, right? Because again, people might look at, you know, Nigerians or Blacks or whatever and say, you know, that person looks like
all
you,
the
but
same.
Yeah, you all look alike or whatever. But then as a person, you're like, no, maybe it's a different shade. Maybe the person doesn't have the same kind of nose or whatever. So it's nice to at least have something to give you an idea, a rough idea of what. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't imagine selecting an egg donor without knowing what she looks like, maybe knowing what she sounds like. I mean, I know people, thousands and thousands of people travel to Cyprus and Poland and Czech Republic.
Czech Republic is very popular,
They don't show photos of egg donors at all. It's illegal. It's the law. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to do that. I take my hat off to those women who are brave enough. And yes, the only way I could imagine that someone being comfortable, that is their end goal is, I want a healthy, happy baby.
Exactly.
So they are not too worried about the physical characteristics, as long as it matches up to them, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes for someone like me. But, you know, I think as we've become more and more modernized, it's important for us I would want to know. If I needed an egg donor, 100%, I would want to know as much as I can. And most certainly, I wouldn't be worried about what she looked like as a child at all.
I know. What do you look like now?
I was like, please send me your photos from your 25th birthday.
Exactly.
That's what I want to see, those photos. I don't care what you look like at 17, because I look very different at 17.
I know, right?
Than I do at 25.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. So I know for sure lots of people will be excited about what your agency offers. So I'll definitely be putting your information as well in the show notes. So thank you so much, Genevieve. It was a very informative section.
Pleasure.
And thanks again for also stressing the importance of counseling, of therapy, because sometimes we forget that that's very essential in this kind of, in this whole journey. It's important, either you're using your own eggs or a donor. It's a very stressful thing to go through and experience.
It is very stressful.
So the support is essential. So thank you. And any final words? Anything else you want to say?
Ask all the questions.
Yes.
When you're with your doctors or with me or with another clinic, don't feel that you're not entitled to ask your question. No matter what question it is, big or small, don't ever leave a consultation with a question unanswered. You're paying money, good money, for these medical professionals to help you. For someone like me, if you have a question, please ask it. There is no stupid question. And you know, you would feel so much better when asking your question versus leaving and having it unanswered. So please ask a question and be a big advocate for yourself in this journey. Yes, your doctors and medical professionals are there to help you, but if you don't advocate for your rights and advocate for your success, you can become a number to the clinic, because they're helping thousands of people and they do provide individual treatment, but you need to speak up for yourself.
Right.
And that's one thing I've noticed, is that we need to advocate for ourselves as women in many things that we do, especially in IVF. So please, ladies, if you have a question, ask it, so that you may leave the room feeling empowered and being able to make the right decisions for your journey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Genevieve. As I noted earlier, you can reach Genevieve on Instagram at Traveling Donors, and also on our website, travelingdonors.com. So thank you so much, Genevieve. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we look forward to having you again in the near future.
Yes, because when I come back, I'll be able to talk about egg freezing for the career woman.
Yes. Do you offer that?
Yeah, I'm starting a separate company with a friend of mine, and we will be focusing on egg freezing, fertility tourism packages for the young career woman. So women from Nigeria who want a holiday in Cyprus, but also want to freeze their eggs. We're going to be building packages where all you need to do is you'll come to our website, you'll pick a location and a package that you like, and then we'll take care of everything for you. And one of the concepts that we're adding on this is we're looking at doing it as a group. So you may meet other young career women from all over the world.
Networking as well.
Who will do it at the same time as you. So like hypothetically, you'd log on to our website, you'd check out what dates we have available. And at the same time, you'd also be able to see which other businesswomen have signed up for the egg freezing vacation, so that you could know who you're going to be getting to meet. And another thing people can also then do is you can book corporate egg freezing packages. So if you have So if you're 4 or 5 women from the same company and you'd like us to come and do a virtual presentation to like your CEOs on the importance of egg freezing, so that they can give you 2 weeks off. So that is the direction I'm also moving into, because obviously I'm extremely passionate about young women, because I'm turning 30 in less than 2 weeks now. And when I went through egg freezing, there just wasn't enough support for me personally, even though, and you're like, oh, how can she feel unsupported? She's got 9 years of knowledge. It can be a very daunting and lonely journey, even to freeze your eggs alone. And I was the only one in my group of friends that was doing it, and nobody else was even considering it. And when I went through it, there was, even though I know a lot of the information and I've been through the IVF procedure to be an egg donor, it's very different when you're on the other side of it now. You're now doing this for yourself personally. So that's a new company that we're forming to help women my age who are looking to freeze their eggs, but something like a fun vacation where you can meet 4 or 5 other businesswomen doing it at the same time. So that's the concept we're busy working on.
That's an amazing idea, and that's I'm looking forward to that happening. Definitely, I can see lots of people wanting that. It's actually pretty amazing, because again, like you're noting, people actually need to start pushing for egg freezing. Some people even have conditions that might impact the egg quality, and it could get worse as time goes on. So, pushing to have that done, and a vacation, and meeting other women, networking, building more businesses. It's perfect. Yes.
So the one thing I remember when we came over to do our eggs, the one egg donor cycle that we've done in Lagos, was that actually the cost of treatment in Nigeria is not always cheaper than other countries. No. Like the IVF costs in Nigeria is, I think, around $7,000, $8,000 US. It's not as affordable as some people think Africa is.
As Cyprus, for example.
Exactly. I mean,
or Czech Republic.
I could freeze my eggs in Turkey for $2,000.
Wow. And that's just right here. Lots of Nigerians go to Turkey all the time for vacation and to...
Exactly. So that is why we are now going to be building egg freezing packages and like corporate egg freezing retreats, where all the young women from a company, they can go together at the same time and get it done. But it's exciting because I feel like we're creating something for career women that isn't currently there.
Yes.
If it wasn't for the fact that I had been doing this for 9 years, number one, I knew egg freezing was the right thing to do. Number two, I don't personally know if I want children, which made it even more difficult for me to go through the egg freezing journey, because I don't know if I personally ever want children. I haven't made up my mind. Right. I'm currently still leaning against the no side. So I froze them regardless. And I think that made it even more difficult for me, is because I still don't know if I want children. So freezing your eggs when you don't know if you're going to use them does add another layer to it. And that is where I felt that I didn't have the support, or where it would have been really nice if I was doing this process with a couple other women at the same time to chat about the thoughts and feelings that we had about this. Like, hey, like, how do you really feel about this? And other women who are not, as proactive or thinking about freezing their eggs or don't need to, they won't understand the feelings that a high profile lawyer or an up and coming doctor, what kind of feelings and emotions she has to make this decision, even though we know it's for the best. It doesn't mean that those feelings shouldn't be addressed.
Exactly. And it just gives a choice. People need to have that option. And I love the corporate packages, because again, lots of companies, I think even for companies, it helps them, right? Because if you give your staff the 2 weeks to do something, to give themselves some kind of reassurance for the future, some kind of security for the future, it helps them to work better and understand that the company also cares about them. So it's a small investment in something that could really work out well for the company.
Exactly. Especially if it benefits the company, it benefits those young women that fall into that age bracket of 27 to 35. Because that's the group that we'll be focusing on. I mean, it's exciting, because that's why I'm starting it, because we haven't seen anybody else creating the support for the younger age group. There's so much out there for your late 30s and 40s. But there's very, very little out there for your 27, 28, 29-year-old who's going, hey, I know I kind of should freeze my eggs, but where do I even start?
Exactly.
And sometimes when it's overwhelming like that, like a lot of young people, we know, the millennials, when things get too difficult, they just kind of sometimes give up. And I wouldn't want a woman wants to freeze the eggs to run away from the computer just because it looks way too overwhelming. So we're hoping to make it a lot more streamlined, a lot more simple, so that the people who do go through the egg freezing procedure don't have to worry about much more than packing a bag and getting on an airplane.
Exactly. And that's why the support and having other women at the same time will come so essential and very useful at that time, in helping them navigate that whole journey. So perfect. It sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be doing some documentaries. We're going to be filming in Turkey and filming in Cyprus for the egg freezing and the egg donation side of it. So once I've got some more details, then I could definitely jump on and come back and chat about that for the younger age group, because that's really what sort of ignites my passion at the moment, is just trying to create a service for myself, something that I would want to be involved in. Exactly. If this product existed, I probably would have bought into it myself 2 years ago when I did it. So because the thing is, infertility is curable if you are proactive at 27 or 28 years old about your fertility future.
But we don't know. Nobody knows, right? You're just like, whenever I'm ready, whenever I meet somebody, but you can still get ready before all of that.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't need to wait for a man. I mean, you can take charge of your reproductive future yourself and feel empowered, so that if you do meet somebody at 36 years old, you have eggs that are 29 years old.
Exactly.
And if you guys try for a year or two and don't fall pregnant, you know that you have an insurance policy so that you can still have that child. And also it ends up saving you thousands and thousands of dollars down the line of treatment if you froze your eggs now versus, and then like just knowing that by creating this new, like expanding on my knowledge for younger women, and knowing that I can prevent or help avoid a lot of trauma and heartache for women my age 10 years down the line, that is a huge motivating factor for myself and my friend who are starting this now.
Yeah, it's an excellent idea. So definitely looking forward to the lunch and having that happen. And I love those locations you've chosen, Turkey and Cyprus, beautiful locations. You know, it's a perfect vacation to you know, get your insurance sorted and then live your life, and whenever you're ready.
Exactly.
It's there.
And that's the thing. Most women, if you're young enough, you would probably only need to freeze your eggs once. Very rarely, like me, I only got 9. But it's my personal choice. I want to have around 20.
Right.
But most young women, you know, they naturally produce around that. I've just got my body just works differently. And, you know, once it's done, you never need to think about it again.
Yeah.
You know, you've frozen them, you freeze your eggs at 30, you get 18, and you never need to think about it again. You can go back to living your life, and they're there if you ever need them one day.
Yeah, that's perfect. I wish I had that when I was 27. But again, I love the idea because you want to make things better for the younger women, right? You don't want them to go through the same things that, you know, I'm having to go through, right? So you want people to have it easier. So if there's a way to help people, for sure. So I'm really excited about what you have coming. And we look forward to having you coming back to discuss that and empower more Nigerian women to take charge.
Yes, ladies.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Fertility Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Conversations. If there are any topics you would like to have discussed, please send an email to fertilityconversations@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you again for listening. Take care of yourself and do stay hopeful.